Welcome to College Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: fire, other ravages jeopardize California's prized forests. Michigan State says Mel Tucker violated school sexual misconduct policies. Urban Meyer names the best coach in college football. My summer attending anti-cancel culture university. Rationing access to apprenticeships is increasing the UK's skills deficit. Fire, other ravages jeopardize California's prized forests. The Toronto Star. Increasingly intense wildfires are altering landscapes around the world, threatening wildlife, carbon capture efforts, and water supplies, according to scientific studies. The disappearance of forests due to these fires is a result of factors including firefighting over a century, the elimination of indigenous burning, logging of large fire-resistant trees, and other management practices that have allowed small trees, undergrowth, and deadwood to choke forests. Drought and a changing climate have also increased the likelihood of intense fires. California, in particular, has experienced 12 of its largest 20 wildfires in the past 5 years. A recent study found that the state has lost nearly 7% of its tree cover since 1985, with forest decline accelerating rapidly after 2000 due to larger and more frequent fires. The changing landscape of forests has prompted debate about how to manage them. Some environmentalists argue against logging efforts, claiming that large fires are a result of weather and climate change rather than forest mismanagement. They suggest that dense patches of trees and severe fires have always existed in forests. However, others argue that failure to manage forests properly can result in intense fires that harm wildlife habitat, the ability to store carbon in trees, and the quality of water supplies. Burn scars are more prone to flooding and erosion, and runoff becomes tainted with ash and sediment. The U.S. federal government, which owns nearly 60% of California's forests, has agreed to work with the state to reduce fuels by 1,560 square miles per year by 2025. The plan includes cutting smaller trees and setting intentional fires to clear accumulated forest litter. However, thinning projects often face court challenges, and there are concerns about the risk of prescribed burns escaping their perimeters and destroying homes. Michigan State says Mel Tucker violated school sexual misconduct policies. Washington Post. Former Michigan State football coach Mel Tucker has been found to have violated sexual harassment policies by a university hearing officer. Tucker had been the subject of a formal complaint from Brenda Tracy, an activist and rape survivor, who alleged that he had sexually harassed and exploited her. Tracy's complaint had been lodged in December 2021 and an independent investigator was assigned to the case, with a hearing taking place in October 2022. Tucker, who was fired for cause last month, has 10 days to appeal the decision. Urban Meyer names the best coach in college football. Yahoo! Urban Meyer, the 3-time national championship-winning head coach, believes that Kyle Whittingham, the coach of the Utah Utes, is the best head coach in college football. Whittingham has led Utah to success in the Pac-12 conference and consistently gets the most out of his team. However, opinions on the best college football coach are subjective and vary among different individuals. My summer attending anti-cancel culture university. Financial Times. A new wave of alternative universities is emerging in the U.S., aiming to counter what they perceive as a liberal bias in higher education. Institutions such as the University of Austin in Texas and Ralston College in Georgia have raised millions of dollars in funding from conservative backers, including venture capitalist Joe Lonsdale, who helped found University of Austin. These universities are critical of cancel culture and what they see as a lack of intellectual diversity on campuses. They argue that students are not being prepared for the real world and that ideological orthodoxy is stifling debate. While these universities have been criticized for their lack of accreditation, they are able to grant degrees under certain circumstances. Rationing access to apprenticeships is increasing the UK's skills deficit. Financial Times. The UK government needs to change its approach to vocational education and apprenticeships in order to tackle the country's skills shortage, according to an op-ed in the Financial Times. The writer argues that vocational training is rationed at every stage, and calls for a new strategy to treat vocational education and apprenticeships in the same way as university education. The writer also suggests that demand-led funding should be introduced, and that the government should guarantee the offer of a place to every qualified apprentice. Buzz Flabiano makes field goal with 4 seconds remaining to help UTEP beat winless Sam Houston 37-34. Associated Press. UTEP defeated winless Sam Houston 37-34 in a college football game on Wednesday night. UTEP trailed 27-13 in the third quarter but scored 21 consecutive points to take a 34-27 lead. UTEP made a 32-yard field goal with 4 seconds left to secure the victory. Keegan Shoemaker threw for 202 yards with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception for Sam Houston. University official sad about calls to quit over drug scandal. Japan Times. Yasuhiro Sawada, vice president of Nihon University, has expressed sadness over being urged to quit by Mariko Hayashi, chair of its board of trustees, due to his handling of a drug scandal involving the school's American football club. Sawada revealed that he had been under Hayashi's pressure to resign. Hayashi proposed Sawada's dismissal at a board meeting, and the main issue at the center of the scandal is the delay in reporting the discovery of suspicious items at the club's dormitory to the police. UNM ready to pull back curtain on 2023-24 Lobo men's basketball season. Yahoo! Nelly Jr. Joseph, a 6 feet 10 inches transfer from Iona, will play his first game for the University of New Mexico after making it back to the U.S. from Nigeria. Richard Pitino, the Lobos coach, said Joseph had played in an international tournament in Toronto in July before returning to Nigeria to see his family and play for his national team. I felt like those requests were reasonable, said Pitino of Joseph. It was just a long process that we couldn't speed up. It was not a question to answer or submit more information matter. It wasn't any of that. Joseph, who also experienced visa delays in 2020, is expected to play in the exhibition game against Colorado State University Pueblo on Thursday night. Simplicity is key to avoiding a gap in investment returns. Financial Times. Morningstar's annual fund study, known as the Mind the Gap report, reveals that investors consistently earn lower returns than the funds themselves due to poorly timed purchases and sales. The latest study, which covers the 10 years to the end of 2022, found that the average dollar invested in ETFs and mutual funds returned 6% per year, compared to the fund's reported returns of 7.7%. This 1.7 percentage point gap means that investors missed out on almost a quarter of the money they would have made if they had simply bought and held over the period. The study also found that investors fared best in allocation funds that contain a mix of asset classes, and worst in funds that use hedge fund-like strategies or asset classes beyond traditional stocks and bonds. Morningstar advises investors to hold fewer, more diversified funds and to avoid narrow or volatile funds. York student unions that backed Palestinians rejects university's demands to retract statements, resign. The Toronto Star. 3 student unions at York University in Canada have refused to back down from their controversial stance on the Israel-Hamas war. In a statement, they reaffirmed their position that the attacks on Israeli civilians were an act of resistance and rejected the university's demands for them to retract their original statement and step down. The unions accused the university of failing to keep its students safe and attempting to muzzle their freedom of expression. Zion Webb and Ron Wiggins each rush for 2 touchdowns as Jacksonville State eases by FIU 41-16. Associated Press. Jacksonville State defeated Florida International 41-16 on Wednesday night, with quarterback Zion Webb and Ron Wiggins each rushing for 2 touchdowns. The win puts Jacksonville State at a 7-2 record for the season, making them eligible for a bowl game in their first season in the FBS. However, they can only be selected for a bowl if there are not enough eligible teams to fill the 41 games. Webb had 20 carries for 125 yards and also completed 9 of 19 passes for 105 yards with 1 touchdown. Jacksonville State's defense held FIU to just 4 first downs in the first half and 32 yards. Nightmare Hurricane Otis wreaks havoc on Mexican coast. Deutsche Welle. Hurricane Otis, a Category 5 storm, hit the resort town of Acapulco on Mexico's Pacific coast, causing significant damage. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador personally visited the area and vowed to reopen the highway as soon as possible. The storm caused communication outages in the state of Guerrero, making it difficult to assess the initial damage. Videos on social media showed buildings destroyed and cars submerged in floodwaters. There have been no reports of fatalities so far. Hurricane Otis broke records for how quickly it intensified, according to researchers. Climate change is believed to be causing storms to become more powerful. All-girls Catholic school bans same-sex couples from attending formal. The Sydney Morning Herald. A petition with over 2,300 signatures has been launched calling for a Catholic girls' school in Sydney to allow same-sex couples to attend its Year 12 formal. St. Ursula's College allegedly informed students that they could not bring a female date to the event. Sydney Catholic schools responded to the petition by stating that it traditionally celebrates the end of Year 12 without students bringing friends or partners, or by bringing friends or partners of the opposite sex. The petition argues that the school's policy discriminates against LGBTQ+ students and creates a financial burden for those who have already purchased non-refundable tickets and outfits for the formal. Morgan Stanley's Pick and Gorman talk succession, strategy and challenges. Reuters. Morgan Stanley's current CEO, James Gorman, and incoming CEO, Ted Pick, have spoken about the company's leadership succession and strategy. Pick praised Gorman's leadership and said there would be no change in strategy. He also commended his rival CEO candidates, Andy Saperstein and Dan Simkowitz, and discussed the challenging market environment. Gorman highlighted Pick's exceptional operational skills and resilience, and said he would focus on Morgan Stanley and education in his retirement. He also mentioned the ongoing investigation into the bank's block trading practices, saying he would be around to help fix any loose ends. Age no barrier as Indonesia gears up for February 2024 elections. Al Jazeera. Indonesia's constitutional court has rejected a legal challenge to lower the current minimum age for vice presidential and presidential candidates from 40 to 35. However, the court added a caveat that candidates who had already been elected to public office would be allowed to contest even if they were under 40 years old. The decision has paved the way for President Joko Jokowi Widodo's 36-year-old son, Gibran Rakabuming Raka, the mayor of Surakarta, to run as a vice presidential candidate. The court was also tasked with scrutinizing the upper age limit for candidates after a challenge was filed to exclude those older than 70. That challenge was also rejected, ensuring Prabowo Subianto, a 72-year-old two-time presidential hopeful and the current defense minister, could campaign for the top job. Indonesia will hold simultaneous presidential and legislative elections on February 14 next year. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your favorite observer from the 6 Degrees World, Dr. Six. I hope you're all doing well and ready for some news updates from around the globe. Today, we'll be discussing the devastating impact of wildfires on California's forests, the controversy surrounding a former Michigan State football coach, the emergence of alternative universities combating cancel culture, and much more. So grab your popcorn and let's dive in. First up, we have some alarming news from California. Scientific studies have revealed that increasingly intense wildfires are wreaking havoc on the state's prized forests. Factors such as firefighting practices, the elimination of indigenous burning, and logging have resulted in the destruction of forests. Climate change and drought have also contributed to the rise of intense fires. As a result, California has experienced a significant loss of tree cover, impacting wildlife, carbon capture efforts, and water supplies. Environmentalists are debating how to manage these forests, with some arguing against logging efforts and others highlighting the importance of proper forest management to prevent intense fires. It's a complex issue with no easy solutions, but one thing is clear: action needs to be taken to protect these precious ecosystems. In other news, former Michigan State football coach Mel Tucker has been found to have violated sexual harassment policies. The allegations came from Brenda Tracy, an activist and rape survivor, who accused Tucker of sexual harassment and exploitation. This is a serious matter that highlights the need for accountability and the importance of creating safe environments in all institutions. Tucker has the right to appeal the decision, but it serves as a reminder that no one is above the law. Now, let's move on to the world of college football. Urban Meyer, the renowned head coach, has named Kyle Whittingham of the Utah Utes as the best coach in college football. Of course, opinions on this matter are subjective and vary among individuals. But it's always interesting to hear the perspectives of those who have achieved great success in the sport. Coach Whittingham's ability to consistently get the most out of his team has earned him high praise from his peers. Shifting gears, we come to the topic of alternative universities in the U.S. These institutions, such as the University of Austin and Ralston College, have emerged as a response to what some perceive as a liberal bias in higher education. They criticize cancel culture and the lack of intellectual diversity on campuses. While these universities have faced criticism for their lack of accreditation, they are still able to grant degrees under certain circumstances. It's a fascinating development that reflects the ongoing debate on campus culture and the role of universities in shaping young minds. Moving across the pond, an op-ed in the Financial Times highlights the need for a new approach to vocational education and apprenticeships in the UK. The writer argues that vocational training is being rationed at every stage and calls for a strategy that treats vocational education on par with university education. Additionally, the writer suggests introducing demand-led funding and guaranteeing apprenticeships to every qualified applicant. It's clear that a change is needed to address the country's skills shortage and provide more opportunities for young people. Now, let's take a quick break from the serious issues and talk about some sports action. UTEP's victory over winless Sam Houston in college football was a thrilling affair. UTEP trailed in the third quarter but managed to turn the game around and secure the win with a field goal in the final seconds. It's always exciting to witness comebacks and last-minute heroics in sports, and this game certainly delivered. On the topic of sports, the scandal involving Nihon University's American football club has caused a stir in Japan. Yasuhiro Sawada, the vice president of the university, has expressed sadness over calls for his resignation. The scandal revolves around the club's handling of a drug-related incident, and Sawada has been under pressure to step down. It's a difficult situation, and the consequences of mishandling such incidents can be severe. We'll have to wait and see how this unfolds. Next, we have news from the world of college basketball. Nelly Jr. Joseph, a new addition to the University of New Mexico's team, is set to make his debut after facing visa delays. The 6 feet 10 inches transfer from Nigeria is expected to bring an added dimension to the team. It's great to see international players making their mark in college sports and adding diversity to the game. Now, let's talk about investing. Morningstar's Mind the Gap report has revealed that investors consistently earn lower returns than the funds themselves. Poorly timed purchases and sales have resulted in a significant gap between investors' returns and the reported returns of ETFs and mutual funds. The report advises investors to hold fewer, more diversified funds and avoid narrow or volatile options. So remember, simplicity is key when it comes to investing. Turning to the world of academia, 3 student unions at York University in Canada are refusing to back down from their controversial stance on the Israel-Hamas war. They have rejected the university's demands to retract their original statement, which referred to attacks on Israeli civilians as an act of resistance. The unions argue that their freedom of expression is being stifled and that the university is failing to prioritize student safety. It's a contentious issue that raises questions about the balance between freedom of speech and the responsibility of educational institutions. And finally, we come to the devastating effects of Hurricane Otis on Mexico's coast. The Category 5 storm has caused significant damage in Acapulco, with buildings destroyed and floodwaters submerging cars. While there have been no reports of fatalities so far, the storm serves as a stark reminder of the increasing intensity of hurricanes due to climate change. It's a nightmare scenario that highlights the urgent need for global action to address the climate crisis. Well, my dear viewers, that's all for today's news roundup. I hope you've enjoyed our journey through these diverse and sometimes challenging stories. Remember, your thoughts and opinions are always welcome. So, what are your thoughts on today's news? Do you have any burning questions for me? I'm all ears. Let's keep the discussion going and continue exploring the world through the lens of 6 degrees. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay connected. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.